Hey, welcome to Expand Your Us here in August of 2021. I am thrilled for you to be here. And this week I have an essay that is repurposed from an earlier writing that I've done, but it's about dogs and bias. Our dog turns 4 this month, and she is worth talking about for a couple of reasons during this season of re-engaging after 18 months of being disrupted or alone. First, she has been a constant reminder that I cannot, in fact, will things to be true that just aren't. For instance, when we adopted her, I thought adding a puppy would not destroy our lives or give me old lady shingles or trigger a depressive and exhausting year. I was wrong. Maybe she is not to blame for that year of hellishness, but she certainly did not help things. It is as if our family bus was teetering on the edge of a cliff, and I thought that our new dog would help stabilize the bus. Instead, she ran full throttle and pooped in the front half of the bus so many times that it plummeted to the depths below. I may or may not still have some PTSD-like flashbacks of dog poop on my carpet, even 4 years later. My misjudgment stems from the truth that we are dog people, and after grieving the death of our beloved first dog child, I thought we were ready. I was wrong. Also helpful is the fact that my husband was adamantly opposed from the beginning. That is a precious little gift that keeps on giving, even now, 4 years later. The point is that choosing to care for others, even dogs, is difficult, and it does not always go as planned. As kids hopefully go back to school for good this month, and as we go back into our offices, let's do it anyway. Let's take care of each other anyway, even though it's hard, and perhaps expect the messiness that loving others might require. The second reason to talk about our dog is that people care a whole lot about gender coding. One of our favorite miniseries, now that's a sentence I thought I'd never write, and one that exists with absolutely no context, given that I can't even name another miniseries, is Lonesome Dove. It is Robert Duvall and Tommy Lee Jr., or Tommy Lee Jones, in their prime. Best friends, poignant, really funny. Their names are Augustus McRae and Woodrow F. Call. Naturally, we wanted to name our next dog Augustus, but my sister beat us to it. And so we have a dog named Woodrow, a dog not named for Woodrow Wilson, who was a terribly racist president, but a dog named for Woodrow F. Call. A she-dog named Woodrow. This name leads me often to refer to her mistakenly with a masculine third-person pronoun, and apparently that is a big deal. This is Woodrow. He enjoys chewing on my couch and is a girl. At first, I thought the disapproval was a strange manifestation of transphobia, but having defended myself for 4 years, I think the angst at my mistaken gendered references comes from a loyalty to dogs. The outrage seems to surface at the intersection of dog fans and gender binary adherents. Their incredulity is credible, their passion is sincere, and their assumption of righteousness is solid. Why did you give her a boy name? Excuse me. And I don't have time to go back and re-record this, so the sneeze is going to stay. Why did you give her a boy name? You have to stop calling her a he. My response has been consistent for 4 years. She's a dog. Apparently, our bias about the right way knows no bounds, and this should be considered as we reflect on the year plus behind and prepare ourselves for the year ahead. Bias is a product of intersections among and between familial, socioeconomic, racial, gendered, ethnic, religious, geographical, cultural, linguistic, and educational normativity. Each of us was raised in a specific set of circumstances and grew to engage in a specific set of circumstances, both of which help shape our assumptions about the world. Sometimes these norms are codified in a clear way in a family or community setting. Often, though, they simply shape our thoughts, expectations, and opinions of ourselves and others. The perspective from which I view the world is distinctly shaped by those biases and norms. We all have them, and we all do it. I'm not arguing against bias, but pleading for us to examine and name our biases as we learn to engage each other again after a year or so spent mostly apart. Any glance to the left or right confirms that we are surrounded by people who are distinct from ourselves. This is obvious to all, and yet we somehow take our own cultural norms, our own habits, and ways of being, often utterly unexamined, and we project them all over every person we encounter. The clear presence of diversity among humanity should temper our adherence to our own cultural norms. Perhaps even that is too much to ask, though. Could we at least agree that we each have biases, and these instinctively shape the way we rank and value the actions of others, the way we fear people, the way we look at people, what we expect from people, and that it is perhaps fundamentally unfair and a vast overreach for me to project my cultural norms onto you? Many of us are fabulous at navel gazing after quarantining, but we are shockingly ill equipped to bring a metacognitive gaze to our sense of self possession. That is to say, we cannot hope to truly see or understand the perspective of another if we have not first stopped to think about the way we think. When we discover the origins of what we call normal, we become curious about what someone else might call normal. Our postures change from those of accusation and judgment to observation and curiosity. We begin to look for the origins of the norms that produce certain viewpoints or sets of actions, which is a crucial skill if we hope to appreciate others. This is not a call to abandon our norms as baseless and without merit. Adherence to cultural norms and traditions can be very important in helping one position oneself as a subject, in identity formation, and in the acquisition of agency. I'm simply arguing that a modicum of self reflection might reveal that my bias shapes the way I see you, just as your bias shapes the way you see me. And perhaps naming those areas of bias could lead to productive conversations in which we explore our differences as we literally begin rubbing elbows and working together again. In Lonesome Dove, Woodrow and Augustus are set in their ways. They are stubborn curmudgeons who refuse to align their actions with the values of anyone else. And yet, they both understand and respect the places from which the other comes. Augustus is never going to work on purpose, and Woodrow is never going to squander the day away. Their friendship works because they understand the perspective of the other, and this understanding becomes the foundation of establishing value and mutual respect, which is necessary in all friendships and even interactions. I took Woodrow on a hike last week, and as we were crossing the field to enter the trailhead, she squatted down to poop. Is there anything more humiliating? It is the worst. I stood there, increasingly self aware, self conscious, intentionally trying not to watch, but feeling shame if I made eye contact with anyone. Good Lord, what must they think of this atrocious act of humanity? Dogmanity? And then I thought of bias, and I was reminded that everybody has one and nobody wants to admit it. Every dog has to poop. Every person carries assumptions around with her that hinder or expand her ability to care about someone else. And yet, instead of finding camaraderie in the shared experience of exploring and naming our bias, we all stand awkwardly in the park, avoiding connections with others while we pretend like we can't smell what's right in front of us. If you resolve to notice and explore your bias as the world opens back up, you might find that you become a more curious and compassionate friend, a more agile advocate for justice, and a more humble and consistent ally. Thanks for listening.